915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to learn more.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the borderland. This is 915 Talk, and I am your host, Andy Frecka. Today we are broadcasting from the heart of the world's largest borderplex. We're here at the KELP studio in El Paso, and today we have Mac Daddy Del Norte on the board. Mac Daddy, how you doing this afternoon?
Hey, Andy, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I thought you'd never ask. I must confess that my vocabulary is painfully poverty-stricken as I am unable to describe the wonder and joy of this educational journey that we've embarked upon as we learn to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory. But you know what I'm thinking about today, Mac Daddy Del Norte?
What are you thinking about, Andy?
I'm not thinking just about El Paso.
Okay.
I'm not even thinking about southern New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking about something that I think you're a little bit passionate about, at least.
What is
Because you were telling me recently that your family enjoys once a year celebrating with a ministry here in Texas, the Feast of Tabernacles.
Oh, yes. That is very true.
So what is it about that really is, I guess, exciting for your family?
Well, you know what? The trip itself, we do go to Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Texas, and that's where it's held yearly. And we like to go when it's available, and it's just bringing the two nations together, the U.S. and Israel, and just being able to learn about it and what they present, and just the whole event in itself is really, really good.
Well, that's super cool. It's super cool that you do that, and I know it's like a highlight for your family.
Yeah.
For me, it's interesting because our family celebrates Passover Seder, not every year, but it's something we do occasionally. It's something we really enjoy. But I was recently at a Christian conference, and I saw so many ministries to Jewish people, and I saw the level of passion.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, as pro-Jewish as I consider myself, I still have a lot to learn.
Oh, yeah.
when I saw those folks, you know.
Yes.
And so that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Nice.
And also another thing that I've just kind of noticed recently is just a rise of anti-Semitism. And you'll see that out there on social media.
Yeah.
And it is concerning. So we're going to be talking about a lot of those things. So with us today, we have a very special guest.
Okay.
Do you know why she's special?
Yeah, sure. Because she is a unique expression of an endlessly creative God.
That's right. She is a unique expression of an endlessly creative God. Also, she is a true daughter of the borderland. She's from El Paso. She's lived and served in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And often speaks on topics like the Holocaust, combating anti-Semitism and biblical faithfulness in light of Israel and the Jewish people. She's the executive director of the church's ministry among Jewish people, which is short would be CMJ USA. So I know we have a lot to dive into. So without further ado, let's give a very warm borderland welcome to the one, the only Cariño Casas. Cariño, welcome to 915 Talk.
Shalom, shalom.
So much to dive into over this next hour. I guess I have to ask, just to start off with, how did someone from El Paso become so interested in the Jewish people?
Wonderful question, Andy. So I grew up in El Paso. I grew up at Abundant Living Faith Center.
Okay.
And so I've had the benefit of going to school, Christian school. I went to Agape Christian Academy, and then it became Faith Christian my last year. And so I felt like I knew the Word of God. And 10 years into a journalism career, I found myself in a spiritually dry place. And the Lord moved me to be in community with Christians again. And I went to go look for something to study. And I ran across something in the bookstore that I had never seen before. And it said the Jewish New Testament. And right next to it was another Bible called the Complete Jewish Bible. And this was a translation by a Jewish believer named David Stern. And he had he had intended to write the commentary, but then he found there were translational issues in the New Testament that he felt were obscuring or purposely hiding the Jewishness of the text. And so he went back to the Greek and he translated the whole of the New Testament into a Hebraicized English. So he puts all their names back into Hebrew, and he teases out other connections that we as non-Jews kind of like just read over. Sometimes we read Jesus and we're like, Jesus, what are you on about here? And we just keep moving. So when I read Matthew in the Complete Jewish Bible, I felt like I was reading it for the first time. And here I'd been a lifelong Christian. And I went back for the commentary and I just did a deep dive with David Stern. And I finally get to a point. One of the cool things that he does in that translation, which is available, by the way, on Bible Gateway. If you don't want to go buy a print copy, you can see it on Bible Gateway and put up a parallel to see what he's doing there. But every time something from the Hebrew scriptures is quoted, he bolds it. So you flip through the New Testament and you just see how much bold there is in it. And I finally got to this question that said, okay, why can me, a Mexican-American gal from the borderland, see that Jesus is the answer to all the promises of the Hebrew scriptures, but our Jewish neighbors cannot? And this question moved me to intercession and to prayer, and really just sat in praying with this question for a year.
Wow. Okay. So you're in a spiritually dry place. You're at a bookstore. You pick up a Bible that gives I guess the Bible with the same words or the same meaning but different words.
That's right.
So would an example be that instead of it saying Jesus, does it say Yeshua or?
That's right. So
okay.
Jesus is Yeshua, Matthew is Matiyahu, John is Yochanan.
Okay.
And I'll give you another example. One of my favorite examples is in John 10. And most of our Bible translations, I think it's in the middle of the chapter, says, and Jesus was in the temple for the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter.
Okay.
And we're like, okay, what's going on there? Well, Stern translates that, and Jesus was in the temple, and it was Hanukkah. And all of a sudden, we understand where we are in the calendar.
Sure. Okay. What are some of the other things that kind of popped out to you as you're reading that? It doesn't have to be the most important things, but maybe some little hooks in there that you were like, oh, this is different.
One of the really important ones that I keep going back to, and especially in the Gospel of John, I think some people will read John, and even Jewish people will read John in our English translation, and Jesus is always after the Jews in those translations, and he speaks very harshly about the Jews, and this has been read in the worst possible light, as if Jesus is no longer Jewish and is condemning all of Judaism. And Stern does a very simple translation. Different people handle it differently. But in that context, as Jesus is a Jewish person speaking within a Jewish community to people that are in different expressions of Judaism at the time, then instead of translating that Jews, Stern translates it Judeans, to show that there's actually a religious and a geographical thing happening here. Jesus grows up in Galilee, even though he was born in Judah. And he practices a particular Judaism that was different if you didn't live near the temple. And part of his critique is for those who do live near the temple and have started to make things harder for people. Right? That's one of his critiques of the Pharisees. And so it's an internal Jewish debate. And that, I think that translation choice is very important to remind us that it is an internal Jewish debate.
Okay. So one of the things you said is, as you're reading through this, what I heard you say is you're reading this and you're saying, well, as a Mexican American, I understand that Jesus is the promised one. why don't the Jewish people see this?
Right.
Yeah, and so where did that take you?
So where did that take me? The Lord does crazy things to us sometimes. At the end of this year of intercession, I was freelancing as a photographer at the time, and it was 2008. And if everybody remembers who's of working age, 2008, it was an economically tough time.
Sure.
And I was tired of freelancing, and I wanted a real job, And be careful what you ask the Lord for.
Right.
And I went to church for prayer, and the pastor said, I know a lot of you are struggling financially, you need jobs, whatever was going on. Come up for prayer if you need that. And like the whole church came up.
Wow.
And I heard something, one of the clearest things I've ever heard from the Lord there as I was waiting for the pastor to come lay hands on me. And he said, your job is not here, it's in Israel.
Mm.
And I took it pretty seriously and began to pack up my life. I was in Minneapolis at the time. And a few months later, I did get to Jerusalem and said, here I am, Lord, what are we doing? And that started an adventure I'm still on. I ended up with a ministry there, a house of prayer ministry. But through that, I ultimately get connected to CMJ.
Okay, so I've had the privilege in my lifetime to travel much of the world. Sadly, I've never been to Israel.
Come
What
with
is
me.
it? Yeah. What is it that you would want our listeners to know about a first trip? What are some of the first impressions when you visit the Holy Land?
One, I think that they're people just like us. I think a lot of times we idealize and maybe, dare I say, idolize Jerusalem.
Mm,
And I love it. It's my favorite place on earth. And but these are real people with real world problems. And one of the things that struck me as an El Pasoan that I think the Lord used my growing up on the border as preparation is that Jerusalem and Israel is a land of borders, right?
mm,
There's always tension there about whose land is what, and have you crossed a border? And you can see it visually in some places. I even use the analogy that there's some parts of the city where you feel like you're in downtown El Paso, and then you somehow cross an imaginary border, and it feels like you're in Juarez.
mm.
Things shift, language shifts also. But I just felt there was a lot of similarities to the culture. It's just that instead of somebody yelling at me in Spanish from the market, it was somebody yelling in Arabic or somebody yelling in Hebrew.
Sure.
And that it's people wrestling with those same questions that come up when you live near or on a border.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. So you go to Israel for the first time. You become involved in a house of prayer ministry. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I was with a ministry called Sukkot Hallel, which means Tabernacle of Praise. Since you guys brought up Feast of Tabernacles, that was appropriate.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a 24/7 house of prayer. There's a few of them in Jerusalem and around Israel. And their purpose is to just be in prayer, to be in prayer for the people of the land, to be in prayer for the nations. And so there is always somebody either praying or worshiping with music 24/7. And
Mm,
that was an opportunity for me to just sit before the Lord, to use the analogy people often use of Mary and Martha. I can be a Martha. I'm a get her done kind of gal.
sure.
And being at the house of prayer, it was okay. Let's just sit at the feet of Jesus and listen.
Mm,
And that's what I did, especially those first 3 months. But I did that actually for 3 years at that house of prayer and to listen for the heart of God for the people of the Middle East. One of the things that I've learned in my time working in the Holy Land is the power of the ministry of presence.
mm,
Um, and these are people that have been under conflict since their founding. and war is almost normal. Now, this particular war that is happening now has been exceptional in many ways. One, it's the longest war they've ever suffered since the founding, since 1948. And it's been the most costly
Hmm.
in terms of lives and psychological trauma. But because of that, and because of this resiliency and this, we're tough. We live here, but a lot of times foreigners leave when the conflict heats up. And when you stay, it speaks volumes.
Sure.
It really does speak volumes. And this is a way to do what particular types of Christians would call incarnational ministry. That we are
Hmm.
being Jesus to these people by staying and living their situation.
You're there. You're being present. You're looking to love your neighbors. Uh, what are some of the ways that for those of us here in the States, we can be praying for Israel right now?
Right now, people need to call on God. I mean, that's what we really need to pray for.
Mm,
Um, so they're being bombed by Iran quite regularly right now, just as they are bombing the Iranians. I happened to be in Israel last summer for the last round of Iranian missiles,
mhm.
and I got to experience it for myself.
So we see what's on TV with that. What's it like there on the ground, maybe that we don't see on TV?
It is fascinating how quickly it becomes a mundane part of your day.
Mm,
It's like, okay, we're going to get up and we're going to live life. We're going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to go to the laundromat. Um, I'm going to, I mean, and yeah, you may even go to work depending on what Israel's requiring of its citizens. And then a siren goes off. And it's like, well,
mm.
time to go to the bomb shelter. And everybody runs to the bomb shelter. And most of the people who live there and have lived through many bombings are looking at the clock because they know that after 10 minutes, they can leave the bomb shelter if they still don't hear things.
Okay.
And it's interesting to see how quickly, and it's like, well, okay, we're at 8 minutes. I got to go, you know?
Right.
So there's that, how quickly it becomes a mundane part of your day. Um, but also how taxing it is. I have never been so sleep deprived in my life. I got to experience
Mm,
missiles for 7 days.
wow.
And it's part of the tactic is to break down the people. And so you wait till everybody's just about to go to bed or has just gone to sleep. And there's a round of missiles. So alarms go off. You run to the bomb shelter. You're down there for half an hour. It's over. You got to go back and kind of still yourself to try to get back to sleep. And maybe eventually you do. And boom, another siren about 4 or 5 a.m. That was the rhythm that I experienced in June of last summer. And
Mm,
you're just exhausted. And
sure.
but you get up and you live life.
Hmm. Wow. Okay, so let's get back to just this whole. You're talking about David Stern's translation of the Bible. It's been interesting for me. This Sunday is Palm Sunday. We're recording it the week before. We're recording this conversation the week before Holy Week, just to see the relationship between Zechariah 9:9, Jesus riding on a donkey into Jerusalem. Then we see the fruition of that in the New Testament. Uh, I guess the other part is I've heard it said many times that Jesus read the Old Testament. That's the Bible he read because the New Testament hadn't been written yet, and he was basically able to preach the gospel, in my understanding, out of the Old Testament. What are some of the other things for us to understand about that? And then maybe just to keep in mind when we're having conversation, maybe with our friends or family, even here in the borderland, who are of a Jewish background.
Yes. I think the thing we need to keep in mind, one, I wanna I wanna tell listeners when you're reading the New Testament or reading the Bible, and I hear preachers do this. We talk about the Jewish people in the past tense.
Ah.
And that's part of our problem sometimes.
Mhm.
There is actually a book that I recommend to your listeners who may be interested in this topic, and the title's quite shocking. It said "People Love Dead Jews" by
Wow.
Dara Horn.
Okay.
And the point that she is making is that we'll talk about history and we'll talk about the Bible and we'll do Holocaust education,
Mm.
but it's all back there.
Right.
And there seems to be, in her estimation, little care for the living Jews among us.
Mm.
So that's the first thing I would say. And with that comes, yes, these are people. Okay, not all of them, because not all are synagogue going people, but people
Mhm.
who are synagogue going and are reading the scriptures every Saturday. They read from the Torah and they read from the prophets every Saturday. And these are people that still have an expectation that the promises in the Torah and in the prophets are still there, that God is still going to fulfill those promises. And for us as Christians, sometimes we jump to Jesus so fast and we
Mhm.
say, well, yeah, but Jesus already did it. So let's just move forward. And that is detrimental to the conversation.
Interesting. So what is another way of having the conversation? Because I'm sure I'm guilty of that.
I think we need to listen to their expectation. We need
Mm.
to listen to their interpretation,
Mhm.
and then engage in a conversation that says, okay, what are you expecting? Oh, we may find we're expecting that too, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I told a guy one time in a conversation that I had, you've been waiting for the Messiah twice as long as we have.
Mm.
And so let's wait for him together.
Mm.
And also, they've been engaging with the scriptures, particularly the Hebrew scriptures, twice as long as we have.
Sure.
And so, where can we be listening instead of lecturing,
Mhm.
and creating a true relationship and a true friendship that engages with hard questions?
Okay. Love this conversation, learning a lot. If you're just joining us, we're with the Reverend Cariño Casas. She is as we said at the beginning of the program, a true daughter of the borderland. But she's gone on, she's now in Pennsylvania, but she spent quite a bit of time in Jerusalem and Israel. She's with CMJ USA. That's the church's ministry among Jewish people. You can find their website, cmj-usa.org. Really enjoying learning more from this conversation, but we do need to take a break. Before we go into the break, this is your daily reminder that 915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. So you can listen to this or any previous 915 Talk conversation by going to desertvoice.media and clicking on that 915 Talk link. It truly is a joy and an honor to be able to be on this educational journey each and every weekday afternoon as we learn to love our city, love our neighbors. And today we're learning to love the Jewish people even more and give God all the glory. We're going to go into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Breaking worldwide news. You can now feed your mind, feed your soul with great Christian teaching and talk on Alexa. That's right. All you have to say is, "Hey Alexa, play KELP radio," and boom. Instant Christian teaching, talk, and truth 24/7.
Greetings, KELP listeners. My name is Terry Gray, and I have the joy and privilege of serving as the pastor of Calvary Chapel Sun City, located on the west side of El Paso. I also have the joy of connecting with the radio audience in the borderland through the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on this station. On Summons, we study the Bible book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, precept by precept. Please join us each weekday at 5 p.m. for Summons right here on KELP.
This is Pastor Steve Castrita. I'd like to extend the invitation for you to join us in service every Saturday at 5 p.m. at Redeeming Grace Church, El Paso. We are located at 2400 George Dieter inside Iglesia Philadelphia. We're a young church on the east side of El Paso with no smoke, no lasers, and no gimmicks, just the uncompromising Word of God and a call to win the 915 for Jesus Christ. We'd love to meet you and your family. God bless you, and thank you for listening to KELP.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
And we're back. This is 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today we have El Paso native, the Reverend Cariño Casas with us. She's with the church's ministry among Jewish people, learning about this whole dynamic, learning how to love Jewish people even more. And you kind of, Cariño, before we went into the break, you started talking a little bit on this subject of anti-Semitism. Well, maybe more than a little bit, because what was the name of the book?
People Love Dead Jews by Dara Horn.
Right. And it is an interesting point that very often we love historic Jewish people, but how are we loving Jewish people around us today is, I think, the point you were making. But my wife and I have talked about this several times recently, because we've seen on social media, particularly among young men here in America, it feels like just a little bit of a rise in this anti-Semitism, possibly brought on by these geopolitical events. Obviously, I'm teeing you up with a huge question, but speak into that.
Yes. There's a book called How to Fight Anti-Semitism by Bari Weiss, and she has a really interesting analogy there that anti-Semitism is like this virus in humanity. And in good times, it's just kind of sitting there dormant. But there's something about tough economical times or war times that triggers this virus.
Interesting.
Because we're looking for somebody to blame. And too many times in history throughout the West, and this is a Western problem, the Jewish people become the scapegoat. And this has to do with bad theology that came up early in the church on blaming the Jews for the crucifixion of Jesus, and charging them with the charge of deicide, the murder of God. And then not holding only the first century Jewish leadership accountable, but putting blame on all Jewish people for all time. And unfortunately, we see this in some of the early church writings. And so I think that's part of what's happening. There is a resurgence right now amongst young people who are clamoring for the old way of doing church. We're seeing a growth in some of our liturgical churches, whether it's the Orthodox Church, the Roman Catholic Church, or in my context, the Anglican Church. But one of the things that has come with that, unfortunately, is as people are going back to some of the older readings, reading them without context or reading them out without critique, and taking at face value some of the really anti-Semitic things that some of the church fathers said and others afterwards. Even Martin Luther, father of the Protestant Reformation, ends his life as an anti-Semite, unfortunately, and says some horrific things that set up Nazi Germany for the Holocaust 500 years later.
Right.
So 400 years later. So one, we have to see that this is a false thing to blame the Jewish people. The Jewish people, there's about 15 million Jewish people in the world, 8 billion total population. And so there's this egregious lie, like they control the levers of power. They are the reason that everything goes wrong in society. And it's such a crazy lie. And I really believe that there is a spiritual aspect to this. and that we have to be mindful of. And what is the enemy trying to distract us from?
It's interesting. I ask you about this, and the first thing you said is that it's a Western problem. I think a lot of times here in the West, we'll think, well, it's the Arabs who hate the Jews, which I assume is definitely from what I understand, is definitely a problem, and it definitely exists. But you're pointing towards what's happening here, and what I heard you say was during times of war, in turn, also during times of economic stress, it seems that this virus happens again, where everyone starts blaming the Jewish people for economic hardship. And you're saying that's completely false. Uh, is there a way to fight the virus?
Yes, is there a way to fight the virus? I believe that the antidote to fighting this virus, especially within the church, is to remember the Jewishness of Jesus and to remember the Jewishness of the gospel. And this is why David Stern's translation was so revolutionary for me, and is still amongst the Bible translations that I read, because we need to keep that Jewish context before our eyes at all times. And we need to take Paul's words in Romans seriously about the fact that God still loves the Jewish people, even if they can't see Jesus right now. And the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable, Paul says in Romans 11. And do we take this seriously, especially as we read the scriptures and we read the prophets and what God has promised the people of Israel and the prophets? And two, as we engage with Jewish people, if Jesus has Jewish DNA for all eternity, how are we going to treat his brothers and sisters in the flesh?
Right. So how are we going to treat them?
Yes. So as I was saying earlier, we need to one, listen. We need to listen better.
Right.
We need to show ourselves friendly right now. Anti-Semitism is at an all-time high, and it continues to rise. It was already at an all-time high before October the 7th, 2023. And that just seemed to really just take the lid off of it. And it shot up as people reacted to October the 7th and Hamas attacking Israel, and then Israel's subsequent response. And now with the war with Iran that the U.S. has gone in with Israel, people continue to protest those actions by attacking our Jewish neighbors here. And that's just plain anti-Semitism. Just the beginning of this week, somebody set a bunch of Jewish ambulances on fire in London in front of a synagogue. Why? Why? Because they're angry about the war. What does a Jewish ambulance in London have to do with the Israel Defense Forces and Benjamin Netanyahu? Nothing. Is there a relationship? Yes. But the instant you start attacking synagogues, then a few weeks ago, right, a guy drove a truck into a Jewish preschool intending to set it on fire with 140 kids in it. Why? Because he was angry at the war. And so we need to be paying attention, one, to these things. Two, we need to, when we hear people speaking badly about the Jewish people, we need to step in and say something.
Right.
We need to say, that's an anti-Semitic joke. Don't say that.
Sure.
Why are you blaming the rabbi down the street for something that the nation state of Israel did? That's wrong. And then we also need to check on our Jewish neighbors. Every time something happens in the community like this, it's very traumatic for the larger community. One of the things, if you read Dara Horn's book that I've mentioned, the reason she writes the book is because there is a series of 3 high-profile anti-Semitic attacks that happened in the United States over an 18-month period. And the first one was here in Pittsburgh. A man walked into a synagogue on a Saturday morning and murdered 11 helpless worshipers. Why? Because he was angry about immigration. He had bought into a lie called the Great Replacement Theory, which is that non-whites are coming to replace the whites, and that it is the Jews who have welcomed them in. That is kind of a nutshell of replacement theory.
Okay.
And because he was angry about this, he went and murdered Jews in a synagogue.
Wow.
And so that happened. And then another young man, also angry, had kind of put his Christian theology with white supremacism. And he walked into a synagogue 6 months later near San Diego on the last day of Passover, and started shooting people. And then there was another event in New Jersey. Another group attacked a kosher deli in New Jersey. And Dara Horn asks the question aloud that I think a lot of Jews think about is, are we safe here anymore?
Mm.
The United States has been a haven for the Jewish people for a long time, not just since post-World War II, but the first big wave of Jewish people come at the end of the 19th century because they're fleeing. What are they fleeing? Christian anti-Semitism in Russia.
Yeah.
And so, this has been a relatively safe place. And now we've had all these anti-Semitic attacks on synagogues and Jewish spaces. And so we need to check on our Jewish neighbors, because as a whole people, they are very sensitive to this. When something happens in Michigan, the Jewish people here in Pittsburgh are double checking their security. They're increasing the security guards they have on Saturday morning. And so I call or I reach out to the rabbi or the cantor and say, are you guys okay? Do you need anything? Please remember that our church is just down the street. If you guys need anything, call us.
Mm. And how what's the response on that?
Yes, I had the great privilege of speaking at a synagogue. They asked me to speak about my last trip to Israel.
Interesting.
And I also spoke about how I'm pushing the church on the anti-Semitism issue and trying to raise awareness. And the cantor came up to me in front of the whole congregation, gave me a hug, and said, I feel a little less afraid and a little less alone.
Mm.
And so our Jewish neighbors really want to know who their friends are.
Mm.
And the followers of Jesus of Nazareth, the Messiah of Israel, should be top of the list. And we need to love them for the sake of loving them and for the sake of Jesus. And do we want to talk about who the Messiah is? Of course we do.
Sure.
But can we love them when they say no? We should. I think Jesus is calling us to love them even when they say no.
Yeah. Wow. So much to dive into. I have a question now. Normally this program is live, but you're in Pittsburgh. We're in El Paso. This is pre-recorded. So if you don't want to answer the question, we could skip over it. But one of the things that I've seen, our listeners know that I lived overseas most of my adult life. I've been back for the past 4 years. And just following a lot of Christian media is that there is, so many organizations working in Israel. I would say most of our listeners of this radio station are extremely pro-Israel, so they want to do something. And as I've dived into some of these organizations, at least what I see online, it makes me question how well those funds are being used. So do you have maybe a rule of thumb or two in supporting Israel financially?
Yes, I do. Because you're right. There's a lot of organizations. Some are Christian organizations. Some are not Christian organizations. And one of the rules of thumb that is really important, if you're getting asked for money, is what does that organization think about the Jewish followers of Jesus in the Holy Land?
Okay.
There's a couple of organizations that do wonderful work, and they do a lot of interfaith work. So it's Jews and Christians together. But the instant a Jewish follower of Jesus shows up, the conversation shuts down, or they don't want them there.
Mhm.
Or, they don't see them as a Christian and they don't see them as a Jew, or they see them as an apostate Jew. And so that's very important because there are Christians in the Holy Land, both Arab and Jewish.
Right.
So if there's a ministry that is, one, working with the Messianic congregations, and two, even better, working at reconciliation within the church so that Jews and Arabs who know Jesus get to know each other and can work past the political issues for the sake of Jesus, that's a strong ministry. And so, and I mean, people have different things that they want happening in the land. So if you want to give towards bomb shelters right now, that's great. Find an organization that's doing that. If you want to make sure that people are getting food, because right now there's no tourism and that means the shop is closed or there's no tour guiding, then give to ministries that are doing food distributions. So listen to your heart and what the Lord's calling you to, but also make sure that they are thinking of the whole body of Christ in the land.
Okay, that's really helpful advice, I believe. Another question I have when I've seen some of these fundraising efforts for Israel is some of the organizations are helping the poor in Israel. And when I see that, I guess in my mind, I've always thought of Israel as being a prosperous nation. So is there a need to help the poor in Israel?
There is. So I was talking earlier about this sense of sometimes you cross borders, and sometimes that feels like going from a really clean, prosperous, new, shiny building on the street to less taken care of, shabby, and so yes, there are people struggling, especially right now because of the war. But there's always people struggling. Israel is a nation of immigrants, and there's always people immigrating to Israel because they're Jewish and they return to their ancient homeland. And Hebrew is a tough language to learn.
Sure.
And sometimes immigrants get stuck because they're not picking up the Hebrew fast enough, which means they can't get work other than menial jobs. And so there are people who get stuck in those places. There's other people who, like in any society, are stuck because of a broken marriage, because of widowhood, because they've been orphaned. War is an issue there. Terrorism, it can be an issue there. And those things affect those people. And that means there's need. And that can be on the Jewish side or the Arab side. It could be on the Palestinian side or the Israeli side.
Okay. All right. Love it. We do need to take a break. If you're just joining us with the Reverend Cariño Casas, she's with the church's ministry among Jewish people. Before we go into the break, Cariño, tell us what your organization is doing.
So here in the United States, the church's ministry amongst Jewish people, we are encouraging and equipping the church to build bridges with their Jewish neighbors. So if you're not sure how to start that conversation, reach out and we can talk about that. And we focus also on teaching the Jewishness of the gospel and the Jewishness of Jesus, because that's so important to frame how we engage with our Jewish neighbors. In Israel, we work very closely with CMJ Israel. We have 2 churches, 2 guest houses, a tour company that right now has been under hiatus, study tours. And we also have a school, a primary and secondary school that teaches kids from across the spectrum: Arab, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, the whole lot. So, and so right now we have a mercy arm as well, called the Mercy Fund, that does some of that practical ministry of food distribution, language lessons for immigrants, and just helping people who are falling through the bureaucratic cracks.
Okay. And the website is cmj-usa.org, or I suppose people can Google the church's ministry among Jewish people. Love what you're doing there and hearing all of that. We do need to go on a break. We'll be back with Cariño Casas. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Greetings, KELP listeners. This is Terry Gray, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Sun City, and speaker on the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on this station. Calvary Chapel, Sun City is located at 960 West Borderland Road on the west side of El Paso. We hold services on Wednesday evenings at 7 and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 11. If you are without a church home, we would love to have you join us for worship and Bible study. You can find out more information about us on the web at www.ccsuncity.org.
This is Pastor Steve Castrita. I'd like to extend the invitation for you to join us in service every Saturday at 5 p.m. at Redeeming Grace Church, El Paso. We are located at 2400 George Dieter inside Iglesia Philadelphia. We're a young church on the east side of El Paso with no smoke, no lasers, and no gimmicks, just the uncompromising Word of God and a call to win the 915 for Jesus Christ. We'd love to meet you and your family. God bless you, and thank you for listening to KELP.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
And we're back. You are listening to 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today, we've been looking, I guess, a lot beyond El Paso, a lot beyond the borderland. We've been here with a true native of the borderland, and you know she's a true native because she grew up at Faith Christian Academy. I know a lot of our listeners went there as well. She picked earlier on in the program, she was talking about how some years ago she picked up what was it, how did you describe the translation of the Bible?
Oh, it's called the Complete Jewish Bible.
The Complete Jewish Bible, and it transformed her life. And here she was, a Mexican American, getting super called to Israel, called to the Jewish people, which I believe we all are in some sense. And she's spent a lot of time in Jerusalem. She's currently in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Cariño, if the internet is correct, it says that you've done some tours here at the Holocaust Museum in El Paso. Right. So what would you want our listeners to know about that? Why would it be worth visiting?
The one, if you can't get to Poland or Germany to study this, I really, for the small space that it is, they did a wonderful job of kind of recreating one of the camps, so you have an idea of how they worked. And that is important history we need to wrestle with as Christians. I've been to Poland twice. I've toured many of the camps. The rector of Christ Church Jerusalem does a yearly tour, a Jewish history tour of Poland, and he's going again this summer. And it's called Narrow Bridge Tour, narrowbridgetour.com. Highly recommend it to you. But I remember getting to a camp called Majdanek outside of Lublin. And I kind of hit a wall, and I just cried out to the Lord. Why did you let this happen? And we have to wrestle with those hard questions.
Yeah.
This is a good God. This is the God of Israel that we have attached ourselves through Jesus. And the Holocaust is this horrific, I can't even describe when you see the evidence. And we have to wrestle with God and understand, how can we trust God with even these horrible things? That he is sovereign and that he has righteousness and justice lined up for these horrible things. So I think if you want to engage with that, if you've never engaged with that, the El Paso Holocaust Museum is a great place to start. The thing that I love the most, though, especially as an El Pasoan, is at the end, they have this panel of Holocaust survivors who settled in El Paso.
Oh, wow.
And their stories are marvelous. Stories of survival, stories of what must be providential protection. And that from all the way over there, from that horrific scene in Europe, they landed in El Paso, Texas, of all places in the world. And I was so encouraged by those stories. And you will recognize some names who were prominent businessmen at a time, or their families may still be around. And it's just encouraging how the Lord saves people and where he plants them. And it's important for us to know Jewish history and how it engages with us. The Jewish people have been in the United States since colonial times.
Right.
They came over here for religious freedom, just like the Pilgrims did.
Yeah,
And
it's been fun. We have a historian who comes on this program once a month, Bernie Sargent, and he was saying that even from the times of Oñate, the original Spanish explorer to come here to El Paso, late 1500s, he had a group of Jewish people with him who were looking to escape from what was happening in Spain. And they were kind of like undercover Jewish people together in this very Catholic entourage crossing the desert. And there definitely is that whole connection here in El Paso. I have not visited the El Paso Holocaust Museum. I do need to remedy that. I did have the opportunity to visit Auschwitz in the late 90s. And I remember this lady drove me there and she says, I'm going to sit in the parking lot. This is a once in a lifetime experience. You're not going to want to do this again. And I think that's really important, just as you're saying, though, to at least begin to understand the history, uh, what happened then, and then we can begin to see really what's possibly beginning to start to happen again right now.
well, and that's one of the things that I so appreciate about the way Reverend David Pileggi does the tour is, okay, we do look at how people responded to what was happening, and shows the people who responded well and the people who responded poorly. And it challenges us
Mm,
that, are we ready to protect our neighbor when something bad comes for them simply because of who they are?
sure.
And we do need to think those through. We need to look at the mistakes of the church, especially,
Mm,
um, and and learn from those mistakes.
sure. Okay, so earlier on in the program, you kind of said, well, you said it would be a good idea just to call the local synagogue, tell them we're here, ask them if they need anything, and you would recommend that, like if a pastor's listening, just to look it up online and make a phone call.
Definitely, I pastors especially. If you're near a Jewish center, yeah, look up the email address. And it's Passover. This year, Passover and Holy Week are right on top of each other. First night of Passover is Wednesday night, the first.
Mm,
And send a greeting card and say, Happy
mm,
Passover. We're thinking of you guys. If you ever need anything, let us know.
yeah.
Shoot an email. Can we go for coffee? I'd like to hear how you're feeling, what security issues you have, and how we can help you.
Mm,
Start a conversation. Now, it it takes patience and grace,
mm,
because of there's a lot of anti-Semitic history, and the church has made many mistakes um, in its 2,000-year history in how we engage with the Jewish people. And
sure.
so there may be, like, oh, why is this guy talking to me? And
Sure.
so do be prepared for that kind of like skeptical look you might get. But
Hmm.
this is where we need to be persistent and say, no, we want to make sure you're cared for. We want you to know that we see what's happening, and we want to know how it's affecting you, because we need to learn.
Right.
And if we approach with that humility, a relationship will start and a friendship will start. And the hope is that it will build a friendship that will sustain deeper conversations down the road.
Mm. Love it. We're running out of time. Cariño, if you could pray one prayer for the Jewish people, what would that prayer be?
That everything that they want and hope in Messiah will be revealed to them, and very soon.
Mm, love it. Today we've been with Cariño Casas. She's with the Church's Ministry Among Jewish People. The website is cmj-usa.org. Cariño, really appreciate your input, your time, this conversation.
Thank you so much, Andy, for the opportunity.
Yeah, as we always say, let's learn to love our city and love our neighbors. And I'm going to add, let's learn to love the Jewish people, God's chosen people, and give him all the glory. This has been 915 Talk. You have been listening to 915 Talk, a production of Desert Voice Media. To listen to this or any previous edition of 915 Talk, just visit